Oh, blessed love family, do give thanks. Just one question. How are your kicks? Huh? How are your shoes? What are you wearing? We are now offering the best in leather footwear, emanating out of the factory of Top Ranking Limited, right here in Antigua, in St. John's, in the nation of Antigua and Barbuda. Brother Nathaniel Maynard, also known as Top Ranking, and his wonderful family have established an enterprise that has stood the test of time.
But it's so different today. And because of what transpired and that early gift that now is Top Ranking, you now decide that you want to give back to the young people of Antigua and Barbuda. Tell me about that.
Yes, this skill that I possess is very deep, and it's not common. I think we've created a phenomenal thing, and I need to have it continued. So I'm investing in the youth of the island to teach them. No cost to teaching them whatever they want to know about the skill, whatever department. But there are different procedures and different for different items, and we have all the techniques of doing it. So I want to give onto the youths that anybody who's interested.
You went off to Italy at a later stage.
Yes, I did. After 12 years of experience,
that trip was to upgrade?
To upgrade, yeah, to learn the industrial system of production.
And now, see those things. With this new line of footwear, we are offering boots, ladies' shoes, ladies' sandals, slippers, work shoes, dress shoes, whatever it is, name it, as it relates to footwear, and it is produced in the factory of Top Ranking. You could order your shoes on wholesale as well as retail. See anything that you like? Just contact me. Area code 12687283162 or email me priestisaac27@gmail.com, and I could give you an example of what all we have in store as well as the price of it. And remember that the quality of the footwear has definitely been tried, tested, and has been proven to be of upstanding. Blessed love.
Learn, trade, and work for yourself. Yeah, you've done it. You guys have done it. Yeah, and successfully you've done it.
Give thanks and praise for life, and Selassie is alive. Yeah man, the land of the priests.
Castle Hill, the Stonehenge of the Caribbean.
2018 Winter Solstice Experience. Join us in Sun City, Antigua, from Tuesday the 18th to Monday the 24th day of December. Come and bask in the mystic of the Stonehenge of the Caribbean. Come and experience sun, sea, sand, and megalith. Spend 7 days and nights in the heart of the Caribbean. Visit our national heritage sites, meet and greet our people, sample the local fruits and produce, plus the beach, banquets, lectures, yoga, and of course, Green Castle Hill. Green Castle Hill, Mount Anu.
Save our national treasure.
And we definitely give thanks, the life giver and the keeper of life. Give thanks for all those who are just stepping in. You have definitely entered the tiger's nest, and this is the moment, you know, the shock of the hour moment, you know, this is the time and space, you know, that carries you to another level. We glorify Kadamawa Haile Selassie I, the international flavor, the universal spice, Radio Anu, cutting through all gens and snares and obstacles, bust apart. We give thanks for your presence, of course, you know, Honorable Priest Isaac here. It is a joy, shalom, salamta to each and every one. And this evening we're going to be beginning a series of a few short programs, a few programs I should say, going into the whole subject of reparation. This is the first part of it, and let me just say to our listeners, we have not, I repeat, we have not sealed up this series directly dealing with the Bible. Let's read between the lines. We have done one program. What was the first one? Noah's Ark, and we did the genealogy of Christ and the virgin birth and all of that. So we're going to be continuing that, you know. There's a series I'm putting together. There's a program I'm putting together, really, where I want to highlight some of the Pauline writings. So you look forward to that. But I thought it was necessary at this time for us to take a look at reparation. So I intend to do that today. I intend to do that next day as well. And as the future goes on, we'll see what the Creator, the Sustainer, has for us to do. Of course, we have with us for the shock of the hour this evening, we have the Honorable Princess Akesha Menin. We have the Honorable Prince Almase, you know, definitely Kiswahili word of the day. And our scientific facts are definitely here for us. You know, in fact, we're going to begin with that. We're not going to even waste no time. Honorable Princess Akesha Menin, blessed love to you.
Blessed love. Good day to everyone. Jambo. Today, we will count the numbers from 50 to 60. And if you all do not know how to count in Kiswahili, then you have to listen carefully. I will repeat every word I have to say. Let us start. Remember to listen carefully. 50. Hamsini. Hamsini. 51. Hamsini na moja. Hamsini na moja. 52. Hamsini na mbili. Hamsini na mbili. 53. Hamsini na tatu. Hamsini na tatu. 54. Hamsini na nne. Hamsini na nne. 55. Hamsini na tano. Hamsini na tano. Tano is a Kiswahili word for 5. 56. Hamsini na sita. 57. Hamsini na saba. Hamsini na saba. 58. Hamsini na nane. Hamsini na nane. 59. Hamsini na tisa. Hamsini na tisa. T-I-S-A. That's how they spell the word tisa in Kiswahili. Sitini. 60. Sitini. Well, that's all for today.
I must say before. Okay, sorry.
And before I go,
how do you say sorry in Kiswahili?
Samahani.
Samahani.
And before I go, tomorrow we will be counting from 60 to 70 in Kiswahili.
Okay, but I was just saying, you know, give thanks for those numbers, Numbari. That's what it is.
Yeah.
Yes, give thanks. And I know those who have been following us are definitely getting into the wealth of knowledge. And, you know, I pick up the pattern now from the 10s to the 20s to the 30s. But I gotta revisit these programs and catch up on my Kiswahili skills, you know. So thank you very much, Honorable Princess. You will say?
Well, that's all for today.
Okay.
Kwaheri. Tonane tena. Bye. We'll see you again.
Blessed love. Give thanks as the Kiswahili word of the day. right here in the midst of the shock of the hour. And as I said, we are definitely going to be looking into getting into the whole subject area of reparation and exactly what it's all about. As I said, we're going to do a few programs on it, and I'm going to be looking at it from a few different angles, and I'll be giving you, definitely my outlook on it. And don't forget now that the time is really on us, I should say. It's at the doors right now for our winter solstice experience right here in Antigua. From the 18th to the 24th of December 2018. What did I say? From the 18th to the 24th of December 2018. Oh yeah, you can definitely come and join us right here in Antigua, in the nation of Antigua in the Caribbean, for our hike to the summit of Green Castle Hill, Mount Anu as we have dubbed it. And I am very sure that almost each and every one that is here in this program now has an idea of exactly what is taking place in Antigua, the Stonehenge of the Caribbean, countless of megaliths, that align with the astronomical belt, the astronomical clock. And I know the Honorable Prince Almasa himself could give you some more information even on that. And well, that will be up to him, because I'm going to give the microphone to him now, because I know he is ready to, greet the people, and he has a few words to give us scientifically. If I'm not mistaken, the previous time he was kicking it for us, he was speaking about the heart, and I remember he said that that's just the first heart, the first half of the heart. Wow, English boy. Yeah, I hope you don't have a half a heart. But whatever the case is, I hope I didn't break his flow. Maybe he had something else planned, but it's up to him. Honorable Prince Almasi.
Blessed love to everyone.
Thanks.
Now, you remember last time we said there was right atria, right ventricle, left atria, and left ventricle. Now, do you know that the heart supplies blood and oxygen? It's really oxygen too.
Okay.
Yes. And the heart is protected by the rib cage. You see those lines like right here? That's your ribs. A lot of people have ribs showing out. Well, we're not going to talk about that. Now, if you fall down and hit your chest, your heart is safe. Now, the arms have high blood pressure, and I think it's called the systolic pressure. Please correct me if I'm wrong. And the systolic. Pardon me. And the diastolic pressure, which is the lowest pressure. Now, do you know that salt rises your blood pressure?
Okay.
Yeah, salt. Many people of you love to eat popcorn and chips and all them GMO food.
I hear you.
Well, you're rising up your blood pressure, even though you can also get heart attacks. Heart attacks. Now, many people have been suffered by heart attacks.
Alright, we definitely do give thanks for such.
Oh wait, and before I go, there will be a test tomorrow on the heart. You might share some comments on your answer, what you've learned. Blessed love.
Alright, we definitely give thanks for that. The Honorable Prince says he'll be giving a test. Okay. On the heart, so that's tomorrow. I hope your heart is good.
And after we get the test, we'll be doing on the brain and the skull.
Okay, my Lord, give thanks. Alright, well, there you go. You already have a future plan up there for you of exactly, pardon me, what is coming there in your scientific facts of the day, and you have a good idea of what's coming for the Kiswahili word of the day. So, wow, give thanks. Well, I'm very honored that I could definitely, be in the midst of such very important information, and give thanks for those who present such. Well, as I said, we are dealing with reparation this evening, and what we're going to do to begin that, we are going to actually be highlighting an interview, which is an interview from the Facing the Truth program, and it is the case for reparations, really. and the guest was the author Ta-Nehisi Coates. Some of you may know of him. That's Ta-Nehisi Coates, and of course he himself an activist for reparations, and he will be speaking about reparations from more so the angle of the blacks in the United States of America. Now, before we even go into the interview, I would just like everyone to be aware of this. For example, tomorrow, just like how the young ones are telling you what to anticipate for the next day, well, I can tell you for the next day, I will be looking at reparations from a Caribbean aspect then as such. Now, this may sound somewhat divisive to you. I'm only bringing it in the realistic realms. In fact, I do not even agree with none of them kind of things from the American way and from the Caribbean way. But many of you who are not in the whole reparations fight or reparations struggle or the whole reparation agenda, really from the political aspect, from the scientific aspect, from the educational aspect, you may not even be aware of the fact that this is on different battlefields, you know. So you do have pockets of division when it comes to reparation. It is not always seen as a holistic thing as it relates to black people, you know. It's a very serious thing. For example, in 1963, the Emancipation, not 19... Yeah, Emancipation Proclamation, not 1963, though, from 1863, you know, but that is the United States of America we're talking about. And in 1834, Emancipation Day in the Caribbean, 1834, 1863. So there's a difference in the history, you know. There's a difference in the colonializers. The French colonialized Martinique, Guadeloupe. You have the English, Antigua, St. Kitts. You have the Spanish in Hispaniola, and you know, these different places. So obviously, on some degree, the people that were chastised by these specific nations will, you know, address or even you know, direct their passion, their anger, their concerns, and even looking for justice. They will look to their former colonializer. It only makes sense. The French is who I'm speaking French here, and we monsieur and them kind of scene there. So obviously the fact that, and my name is Francois and all of that. So obviously I was whipped with the whip of the France or the French of France. So if I'm looking for justice, it kind of look funny that I'm going to Spain, Espanol, and say, well, you know, I mean, you owe me some money in Spain, because all the years I was enslaved, shackles, and, you know, but Spain going to say, but wait, I never enslaved you, you know. And then there is the case where many of these countries have been, I would say, colonialized by one country, and then colonialized by another country, and the French and the Spanish and the British fighting amongst themselves. Sometimes they kick out the other one and take over the country. Yeah, that's why some of these Caribbean countries have this kind of double culture. They speak English, but they still speak a kind of Frenchish kind of language mixed with an African twang, an African flavor, you know, because they had 7 years of the British and 7 years of the French is reality. So even in their cry for reparation, if you're looking at it from a scientific angle, they themselves have to look at that, not just going to the British because the British may have been the last one to have enslaved them and they got their independence from the British, but don't forget the years that the French, you know, maybe it was the French people that brought you here. So all of that, you got to look into the full scope. And as I said, now in the United States, now listen to this part now. To me, all of it is real tricky. In the United States, you have the blacks now seeking for reparation. Not directly from Britain, but from the American government. for what they have gone through. So I'm just saying this to say that many of us, we kind of paint reparation with this broad brush. I would love to paint it with the broad brush. Because Prince Emmanuel outlook on reparation is that, hear this good, you know, that all that benefited from slavery, all that benefited from slavery. This is, to me, this is how it begins. All that benefited from slavery. And the transatlantic slave trade. And, you know, chattel slavery and sugar cane and coffee and cotton. All these big industries and all these bankers and these countries, the main thing is that they must come to one understanding that they need to compensate and bring justice. Let me use that term, because compensate and repay and all that, funny. They need to bring justice to the table. Then we can figure out what the real justice is. They need to bring justice to the table, to bring forward that reparation process to all that have suffered and the generations after under their hand of enslavement. So that encompass everybody one time. So we already see it as a holistic thing. We're not dividing it. We're seeing it as a holistic thing, that the oppressed must be given justice from those that oppress them. That's how I see it. Bam. And once we understand it's a holistic thing, we the Africans primarily, all of us as black primarily, and the descendants of those that were brought into chattel slavery, our justice now must be meted out by those who brought forward such atrocity on us, which is primarily the Europeans, primarily. I know we're going to want to get into, well, the Arabs this first, and this and that, and we can go on and on and on, but once we can come to the consensus that, hey, the wrong that has been done and the wrongdoer supposed to be paid. Now, you don't have to lecture me and tell me that money can't solve the problem. You don't have to lecture me personally, trust me. Believe me, and say, well, these people cannot really give us justice, you know, and it's not them giving us justice really. If I said it like that, it may be a little bit, should you know, put it in another fashion. It's not them giving us justice. It's just justice being served. It's not we waiting, you know, we demanding something here, you know. This is the point. It's not begging and ask, it's a demand. Yeah. So I'm very thankful for all those who are on the front line fighting for reparation. You know, of course, as you can see, I have a different outlook because I'm with the King Emmanuel agenda. You know, and tomorrow we'll go more into that. We're going to hear from Fillmore, what's the hell the name? Alvaranga.
Fillmore Alvaranga.
True, man. Give thanks, man, that we're fighting for reparations for so long. Because our thing is repatriation. Eh? Yeah, we just saying reparation because that's the swang, you know. But just know that repatriation even come before. That's a key part. That has gone, you know. So most of us that are even battling for reparation, no offense to you, man. I love you with all my heart. But we're fighting for a watered down reparation. This kind of, you know what I mean? You know what I mean? You need to give us education and give us scholarships. That can't be no reparation. Scholarship to go where? To Oxford and them places that were built. What are you talking about? That ain't reparation, man. To educate us more. To what? To become a doctor and a Supreme Court judge in the Babylonian system again? Nah, man. No, that's not reparation. That's a token. No, that's not reparation. But anyway.
A token of independence.
And all these kind of different things. Looking to celebrate that around here in a few days. So we're going to go straight to the interview. The case for reparations. As I say, with Ta-Nehisi Coates, the author and writer. And, you know, you're going to just take it in, and from there, Well, from there, the shock of the hour continues. Blessed love.
Welcome. The young man you're about to meet is out to change how we think and talk about race, and he just might do it, beginning with this cover story in the new issue of the Atlantic magazine. Its provocative title is The Case for Reparations. Yes, reparations, defined in the Merriam-Webster Dictionary as the act of making amends or giving satisfaction for a wrong or injury. The wrong or injury in question is what President Lyndon Johnson once called slavery's ancient brutality and the terrible things that have followed it in the name of white supremacy enforced by state power. This article is must-reading for every American. The author is the journalist Ta-Nehisi Coates, who grew up in Baltimore, lives in Harlem, and teaches writing at MIT. He's now a senior editor of The Atlantic, where in this issue he writes, the payment of reparations would represent America's maturation out of the childhood myth of its innocence into a wisdom worthy of its founders. Thank you for joining me.
Oh, thank you for having me. It's an honor.
Here's exactly what you say. White supremacy does not contradict American democracy. It birthed it, nurtured it, and financed it. That is our heritage. What is white supremacy?
It is a system that is really, really old in this country, which holds that a certain group of people who hail, with a certain ancestry should always be ensured that they will not sink to a certain level. And that level is the level occupied by black people. And so what the language of what white means adjusts over time. It doesn't need a static thing called white. At one point, Irish people did not fit into that. At one point, Italian people did not fit into that. At one point, Jewish people did not fit into that. And now they do, and we've changed that and we've adjusted. The only people who never fit into that are African Americans.
So when you ask whites to look at slavery and its consequences,
right?
What are you asking?
I am not asking you as a white person to see yourself as an enslaver. I'm asking you as an American to see all of the freedoms that you enjoy and see how they are rooted in things that the country that you belong to condoned or actively participated in the past. And that covers everything from enslavement to the era of lynching, when we effectively decided that we weren't going to, afford African Americans the same level of protection of the law. It applies to sharecropping, when we decided that we were going to, in whole swaths of the country, allow people to be effectively re-enslaved. It applies to redlining, when we decided that people that lived in certain places would get, the largesse of the government, and people who would not. It applies today in terms of mass incarceration, when we decide that we are going to be harder on crimes committed by certain people, or the same crime committed, by certain people, and not be that hard when it's committed by other people. This is heritage. It's with us. It's with all of us, and it doesn't necessarily. It's not with you because you're white. It's with you because you're an American. Just like it's with me because I'm an American. I have to live with this too.
How so?
I think part of the problem is when we talk about this is a situation of what do white people owe to black people? And that ain't really it. It's what the state, the United States, as we should say, of America, first of all, owes African Americans, but, not far behind that, what it owes itself, because this is really about our health as a country. And I make that delineation because there are people who, and they would say this, who never held any slaves, who were never voluntarily part of any sort of Jim Crow system, who thought, the country should be doing something different the whole time. Nevertheless, we're all part of this. We're all part of this. Whatever solution that, eventually will come out of my tax dollars too, I assure you.
Was there something that hit you in the face as you started going back into the past that you didn't expect to find?
It is the degree to which where we are right now is not a mistake and is not inexplicable. We think of the problem of racism, the quote-unquote Negro problem, or the problem with the color line, all sorts of variations of how it's talked about, as something that's really, really hard to figure out. And it's actually not hard to figure out. You can literally see a policy, from the 17th century, stretching up into, if we can, say conservatively, into the 1960s, into the 20th century, the mid-20th century here in America, designed to injure African Americans. If you understand that, and if you take that, it would not make sense that that would just sort of go away, that injury would disappear within 50 years of half-halting, reform and trying to make things better. It's not actually that hard to figure out. We have it at our core that a certain group of people, who are marked by ancestry, who are marked by melanin, must represent a bottom for us. And you can see that, in the era of enslavement. You can see that literally being written, as I, showing the piece, into the laws. You can see that, when we decide, to, end this period of enslavement, and yet we still can't, get away from, having a two-tiered society. You can see it, most depressingly, I have to say for me, when we go to erect our modern safety net during the New Deal, which, progressives and, and I consider myself in that camp, like to say, that was the era, that was our golden era. Social Security, when it's initially passed, excluded African Americans. Now, it wasn't written that way. It wasn't written that way. What was written was folks who were either, worked as farmhands or worked as help in the house.
Domestic help.
Domestic help, yes, they were excluded. But what that had the effect of doing is excluding, I think, roughly 80% of African Americans in the South and something around 65% of African Americans nationally. And what people will tell you is, well, that got fixed, and it did get fixed. But the problem is during those years, people are injured. People are injured. And that's how you get a gap. The fact that, you injure people for those years, it doesn't mean that, people will catch up when you eventually fix it. And I say that it relates to us today because the argument that we make about Obamacare and the Medicaid expansion is, well, eventually market pressures will force those states in the South to catch up. They'll fix it. But see, in those intervening years, black folks who needed it most, much like black folks who needed it most, during the era when we passed Social Security, will be injured again. And the fact that it gets fixed will not close the gap. And so the question becomes, why do we keep doing that? Why do we look at a map of Obamacare, as they say, and where the Medicaid expansion has gone through and where it hasn't? And why do we see this, swath of the country that's directly identical to where we had plantation slavery?
But you set out to find out, and I was intrigued that you set out to find out in the here and now.
Yes.
You didn't start back then.
No.
You started in Chicago.
Right.
With a fellow named
Clyde Ross, who is in his early 90s now. And one of the essential theses of the piece is that we tend to think of segregation and Jim Crow, and we see, separate but equal. We see, separate water fountains, separate bathrooms. And I wanted to deepen that and say that the relationship is actually different. It's not merely excluding somebody. It's the taking of resources from one group for the betterment of another group. And this happens in all sorts of ways. Slavery is obviously the most direct way. But Clyde Ross, who was born in Mississippi, literally has, his family's land taken out from underneath of him and reduced to sharecropping. When you talk about Mississippi and you say African Americans not having the right to vote, this is not like a symbolic thing. This is the right to see how your tax dollars are used. It actually has effects on your life. And he saw that, and he moved north. He went, served in World War II, noticed that things were a little different in the country, came back, could not live in Mississippi, moved to Chicago, thought it was different, and certainly some things, really were different. I don't want to minimize that. But when he went to get that emblem of citizenship, of being part of that, big, broad, America, that middle-class America that we exalt, a home, when he went to buy a home, he found that he had actually been cut out of society in a much more complicated way.
How so?
Well, Clyde Ross bought a home at the time, or attempted to buy a home, at a time in which home buying in this country was subsidized, where we had an FHA that insured loans so that, if, for instance, I wanted to go, buy a home and I, weren't able to pay for it, the FHA would say, no problem, we'll cover that if he, walks out on his home. African Americans were totally cut out of that.
FHA, Federal Housing Administration.
Yes, exactly. And not only were they cut out of it, we had redlining, which is a phrase that, we all know, but we don't talk enough about, wherein it was said a neighborhood in which African Americans live cannot receive FHA funding. And that went beyond the FHA. Banks decided who they were going to lend money to based on FHA policy. Largely, they responded to that in much the same way. On the Atlantic website, you'll see we have actual maps where you can look at a city like Chicago and see where the loans were and where the loans weren't. And this was a practice that, lasted on paper into 1960 and likely much longer than that.
So you go on until America reckons with the moral debt it has accrued and the practical damage it has done to generations of black Americans, it will fail to live up to its own ideals. Talk for just another moment about that practical damage.
The most obvious example that is obvious is the wealth gap. When you have a family, on average, it's 20 times the wealth. A white family with 20 times the wealth of black families. And then you can really trace this to actual policy. You see it. Again, when we look at these incarceration rates, we so see it. I mean, the gap is so huge. It's not a mere minor discrepancy. We talk a lot about, the achievement gap between black children and white children, but I'm always much more interested in the injury gap. A black child that comes into this world is, because of policy, because of the policies of his country, over many years, is going to arrive with injuries that a white child just isn't. And until we start, decide that, so first of all, until we accept that, until we say that, until we say we did something as a country, yes, we did do something. We have done something, and in many ways we continue to do things that mean that black child is going to come in with injuries that white child is not. We just aren't having a conversation, and you can't substitute and say poor children. That's a separate problem. That's another problem. It's a real problem, a related problem, but it's a separate problem. Until we, directly confront the problem of racism, I don't think we're getting at it.
Help us to understand this point in your piece. Quote, to ignore the fact that one of the oldest republics in the world was erected on a foundation of white supremacy, to pretend that the problems of a dual society are the same as the problems of unregulated capitalism, is to cover the sin of national plunder with the sin of national lying. The lie ignores the fact that reducing American poverty and ending white supremacy are not the same.
Right.
Explain that.
There are plenty of African Americans in this country, and I would say that this goes right up to the White House, who are not by any means poor, but are very much afflicted by white supremacy. This, came up for me very powerfully during at the height of the birther controversy about the president, with Donald Trump is, demanding that the president release his, long-form birth certificate, and then after that, demanding that we see his transcripts. Barack Obama is the best we got as African Americans. I mean, this is as good as it gets. The comedian Sinbad, says, there are no black men, raised in Hawaii with roots in Kansas. That's just not going to happen again. This is the best we have. And if you don't believe him, then you definitely don't believe me, and you definitely don't believe my son, and you definitely don't believe, these black folks, who are born in Cleveland or born in Baltimore or born in, Chicago. So, young African Americans who see that, who see, people who have, totally played by the rules and then come to their, neighbors and tell them to play by the rules too, and they see them being treated with a double standard. The message is, you're not really part of this. The message is a broken social contract. There's one social contract for one group of people and another one for you. I'm a strong believer that the filter of racism and the filter of white supremacy is greatly underestimated, in this country. And that's really the one thing, I've tried to get across. I think
it seems to me that's why you wrote this article.
Yes. No, it's very much why I wrote the piece. And I think one of the things is that we talk about race a lot. We do, so I think it's wrong to say, well, we don't have conversations. No, we actually talk about it quite a bit. I don't think we talk about it in depth as much as we should. And I think part of the problem is when you start talking about it in depth, when you start getting to a level where you say, listen, everything we are, everything we have isn't, is built on past sins, that the things are tied. The things are tied. When you start recognizing that there's something congenital, it's as if, I had a problem with alcohol, and I could say, okay, but I'm just going to go into the bar and I'm not going to have a drink. I'm going to be okay. I don't need to, have any sort of conversation. That's a different conversation than that I have to confess to the fact that I'm an alcoholic. There's something in me, that's here, and I will always have to cope with that, and I will always have to deal with that. The honesty that takes, the strength that takes, the courage that takes is pretty profound. And to have to do that on a national level is, it's not just a weight for Americans. I would say it would be a weight for any society, comprised of human beings. It's very, very hard, en masse for groups. And I, you know, to be honest with you, I have doubts about our ability to do it.
Our ability as white folks to say we were what this nation was founded on white supremacy. It is an organizing principle of our society.
No, I have doubts about us as Americans to do it. I mean, if you think about it, for African Americans, it's a very depressing picture too, because if you're African American, it's like, okay, and then what? So what am I supposed to do with that information? You know, where do I go with that? I'm a minority. It's not like, you know, we're clearly not going to have an armed revolution to seize any power. So what then? You're telling me this, but what am I then supposed to do? It's terrifying. It's terrifying all around. And it's not even terrifying because we're Americans. I think if I spent any amount of time in any country, all countries, you know, have sins in their past. And getting states to confront those sins honestly and directly is really, really hard. The one example, you know, that people often put up is Germany. They say, well, Germany, you know, was really able, you know, to confront its past. But see, the difference is Germany had killed off like 80 to 90% of the Jews who lived there. So they didn't have Jews alive as active, you know, political actors to use that history. It's very easy, you know, to apologize for something when there's no one there to draw any sort of consequence from it directly from you in your country, you know, to be part of your politics. It's fine to apologize after you've wiped everybody out, you know, for all the good that does. America has a much, much more complicated problem. African Americans are very, very much part of the political process here. And so to, you know, as Americans, you know, to look at ourselves in the mirror and say, this is who we are, you know, and that's okay. Frankly, I don't know that any country has ever done that. You know, I'm really, really clear about that. But we look at ourselves as pioneers, you know, in terms of liberty, in terms of freedom, in terms of enlightenment values. We say that we're, you know, pioneers, and I, you know, firmly believe that reparations is the chance to you know, to be pioneers. You know, we say we set all these examples about liberty and freedom and democracy and all that great stuff. Well, you know, here's an opportunity for us to live that out.
Having read the article, I know that you do not mean reparations as white folks writing checks to black folks. Right. So in an ideal world, what form would reparations take?
In an ideal world, when we talk about social justice, we would understand it as, you know, part of healing that heritage and dealing with that legacy. So, for instance, take you know, healthcare right now, right? Like Obamacare right now. When you look at a whole swath of the country again, where, you know, we had, you know, where enslavement, you know, we had plantation slavery on a very, very deep level, and you look at that and you say, why is there not a Medicaid expansion going on there? We would be very clear about why it's not one going on there. And, you know, those of us, you know, who make policy, those of us who have power, who sit on our courts, would think about that when we make rulings. We wouldn't be afraid to say that. I mean, right now, following John Roberts' line, I think what he said was to stop discrimination on the basis of race is to stop discriminating on the basis of race. What we want is a kind of color blindness. We think that's the answer. But color blindness isn't the answer. Color isn't the problem. Racism is the problem, and being conscious of racism is the solution. So when you talk about what that looks like concrete, I would like to see that in our policy. When we were talking about, you know, ACA, you know, it's very funny. One of the attacks, you know, from the right, from people like Rush Limbaugh, was that this is reparations. Well, not quite, but it would be nice if it could be. You know, it would be nice if that was part of it, if you actually did say that. Hey, you know.
Obamacare, the Affordable Care.
Yeah. I mean, there's nothing, listen, an ideal, like taking this outside of the realm of politics, in the, you know, realm of just straight talking about this, yeah, this will disproportionately benefit African Americans. And yeah, that's a really, really good thing. You know, it might actually help, you know, heal this heritage that we have over here. You know, and in an ideal world, you could actually say that. You know, in a world in which people are actively considering reparation and actively thinking about it and talking about it in a serious way, you could say that. You could say that.
And all the more to be said because it's many of the former Confederate states are where the metrics of life are the lowest for African Americans. So you're saying that in a just world, that would be rectified. That would be rectified.
And we would talk very, very differently. We would not be afraid to talk about our heritage, and we would not be afraid to talk about racism, and we would be able to talk about white supremacy in our policy. We would not have to retreat to other language like quote unquote, you know, race, or we would not have to retreat, you know, to other language like quote unquote class. We would say, no. This is about white supremacy, and we have a problem with this, and we have had a problem with this for a long time, and we need to be conscious of that in our policy. When we pass a stimulus budget, for instance, You know, we need to specifically think about helping people who have been injured in our past because they've occupied a certain place in our country. That's what the world looks like to me. You know, it's a consciousness thing, which we don't have at all right now.
You know, some critics who greatly admire your work and who acknowledge that indeed white supremacy has been a central organizing principle of American life find your pessimism, that's their term,
yes.
at odds with the hard evidence. I mean,
yes.
Jonathan Chait
yes.
of New York Magazine looks at how, quote, the United States has progressed from chattel slavery to emancipation, to the end of lynching, to the end of legal segregation, to electing an African-American
right.
president, and sees that there are real signs of racial maturing.
Yes, yes. Well, that's the kind of progress that you highlight and you brag about if you're not on the other end of it. You know, if you're Martin Luther King, you know, it's 1965, and you're, you know, making that, you know, long march through Alabama, certainly you can look around and say, wow, at one point in Alabama, you know, my ancestors 100 years ago were enslaved right here, or, you know, in this region, you know. And isn't it something that, you know, we've progressed to a level that I'm not enslaved? Well, that's progress.
Right.
I mean, yes, that is progress. Jonathan Chait is very, very much right. Also, you know, if somebody, you know, every day comes home, you know, and beats you with a tire iron, you know, and then, you know, decides to stop beating you, that would be progress. But it doesn't change the fact that you are laying, you know, down on the ground bleeding. You know, this is a fact, you know. So, yeah, it's progress. It's progress. But what does that then mean? You know, does that mean that everything's over? Does that mean, you know, it's okay? Does that mean it's, you know, there are all sorts of, you know, progresses, you know, that aren't necessarily, you know, celebrated. You know, you say, well, I'm relieved. You know, I greet that species of progress with relief. I am relieved that all those things happened, you know, but I'm not, you know, going to dance and celebrate and, you know, that's not to be congratulated. I'm relieved, you know. I think that's, you know, how most African Americans would greet that.
Ta-Nehisi Coates, I hope every American reads this piece.
Thank you. I hope so too.
Thank you very much for joining me.
Thank you. Thank you so much for having me.
Of course, we definitely do give thanks and give thanks for such information. Give thanks for the work that the brother has been doing as well. So there you have it, my brothers and sisters. You know, you have a good idea of exactly where I'm coming from. That is why I said tomorrow we will be definitely, you know, going into it now from, let's say, the Caribbean aspect of it. And you'll be surprised that the reparation thing goes so deep that even in the Caribbean now, you're seeing the Jamaicans looking for reparation from the Jamaican government. You know, the Prime Minister of Antigua himself made a statement the other day when he was giving an apology, which you don't know that's a part of the whole reparation, for the atrocities given, you know, to Rastafari specifically in Antigua. And he considered actions that were taken as it relates to the cannabis as reparations. You know, very questionable in my book for sure when it comes to that part of it. But that's what he's saying there. So you can see the reparation has many pockets. And that is why I'm highlighting it like this, you know, because most of us, we have never really sat on it. So with all these pockets, it's good. Yeah, it's good. The Rasta should be, you know, given reparation, and then the blacks in general, reparation for whoever, and the colonializers and whatever. But once we can understand that everything that is being done in these little corners must synchronize with a bigger agenda, a central agenda that involves all parties, not no subsets. It's very important because things will happen, things will be given. You know, for example, let us consider this as reparations. That's what the Prime Minister here said, you know. Yeah, let us consider this as reparations for the atrocities done to Rasta. So if we're going to say now, oh yeah, thank you, we consider that reparations. Well, it's done now. That's it. Story done. And I'm just putting that now on a bigger scale. This millions of dollars here and give us a couple billions. No, we're wasting time. You got to keep in mind, you know, reparation begins with us. Reparation means repairing the nation. It begins with us. We are the one that has to begin to repair the nation, and you repair a nation with education. That's first of all. So we got to edify ourselves, educate ourselves on the subject of not just reparation, on the subject of who we are. Because the majority of the people are not going to run down no reparation, and they don't know who they are. People that know who they are people that speak about reparation. People that understand their African pride. They don't have to be the dreadlocks of the most dreadlocks. They don't have to be, you know, as you know, no assalamu alaikum, nothing. They don't have to be black power. They have people that you may not even consider conscious, but just the fact that they can see what's taking place in the world. There's the fact that they have a little understanding of history. They would stand with you because they have a just heart. They ain't too conscious. They, you know what I mean, they follow the same religion that has been enslaving us. They still nothing changed. Everything's the same. They eat anything, but they know history, and they know people have been dealt a bad deal, and people have benefited from that. And those who have benefited from that, they're still around, and they can do something for those who have benefited, not benefited, but inherited the plight from those that came off of the cotton field and the cane plantations. Yeah, the ghettos that we have inherited. Don't be playing around, you know. And the food stamps and this second class, third class, last class citizenship, and what they used to call in the Constitution, 1/3 or 3/5 of a human being. That's what we have inherited. And the 13th Amendment, that's what we have inherited. You understand? Yeah, this is a serious thing, you know. Slavery is heavy. That's one of my things too. Slavery never done. I don't know who's talking about slavery done. Slavery has never come to an end. I don't know what. They modify it, they twist it around, they added something, they made it look different. They do all sorts of things, but I'm positive. You can say what you want. I know some of you say, well, I know you're saying the same thing to me. Well, you can say what you want, but I know what I'm saying. I'm not going to try to break it all down here. We've been breaking this down from the time we've been doing this. So if you never heard it broken down, you'll hear it broken down in the future. I can promise you that. You understand? But give thanks again for that interview. As I said, I'm not going to, you know what I mean, release all the bullets here right now. We definitely have gone far into the programming. And what I'm going to do, as I said, we're going to seal up here for this evening. And for sure, just inviting you once again, remember, the 21st of December, summer solstice hike to Green Castle Hill. The 21st and the 23rd, morning hike and the evening hike. And remember, it's a 7-day experience that you'll be having with myself. You know, definitely you'll be seeing other sites in Antigua, other historical sites. We definitely intend to introduce you to, you know, the diplomats of the land, your prime ministers and his cabinet, etc. And of course, you know, those of you who are longing to touch the beach, you'll be definitely getting a soak in the beach. It is up to you as well. And remember that we'll be having a very special banquet to, you know, meet and greet the, you know, our historians and our activists around here, our archaeologists around here. You'll be getting lectures, getting a better understanding of the scientific aspect of Green Castle Hill. So you'll be having a wonderful time. Don't worry, all as I said before, all you have to do is just email us. Email us at priestisaacs27, priestisaac27@gmail.com, and just tell us that you desire to, you know, see the itinerary and get the exact price of the package for the visit, the 7-day visit, the winter solstice hike, the winter solstice experience right here in Antigua, in Anu, right here in the West Indies. So, as I said, we do definitely give thanks. We are definitely on time now, and I would say that join us tomorrow as we continue the whole aspect of reparation, which I think is a very important subject at this time. Very, very important, and we'll be looking at it more from the Caribbean aspect. As I always say, if you know your Bible and you do not know your history, the knowledge of your Bible will become a mystery.
And it takes some realize that are amongst us.
Solas.
Jah
Rastafari.
Then want to know who's gonna be the next surprising star. I'll bless I again. Representing for Kidemi, Prince Kidemi. Yeah, man, all of them know say 21 song we use 7 times straight and burn out all iniquity, you know. When we are all with Trinity, you know. Yeah, man. Yeah, man, see there. Give thanks and praise for life, you know, Selassie is alive. Yeah, man, the land of the priests. Burn out John the bass. City that's golden, whole lot of truth been spoken. Never praise the image that's molten. Half of the truth never been spoken. Come Rastafari, make we whole land. Like when we cross the river Jordan. Rebellious youths in the garden. Seems as if they're very hard. They say the place me rebirth, abolish slavery. 1 year after 1980, then take the chain from me foot and me hand and slavery. Them put it on we mind, that's why them never believe we. So then turn we in the merchants, in the prisoners, in the officers, lawyers, goldsmiths and teachers with false God. Every teeth and tongue shall confess, even the governor general. Oh, that man I feel martial. Land of the priest. Every day we pray, every day we pray like Sunday. Together we can't go wrong in this beautiful island of sea, sun and sand. Cause we have 3 houses of Rasta, King Sagaifi's and Ella, Prisky Demi's a lead and Ras free man. So it no matter where you're from in this day and age, from your the transatlantic slave trade, we have got memories though we become of age, and we have been through no blood, sweat and tears. The land of the free. Every day we pray, every day we pray like Sunday. From a city that's golden, whole lot of truth been spoken. Never praise the image that's molten. Half of the truth never been spoken. Come Rastafari, make we whole land. Like when we cross the river Jordan. Rebellious youths in the garden. Seems as if they're very hardened. Give thanks and praise for life, you know, Selassie is alive. Yeah, man, the land of the priests.
Green Castle Hill, the Stonehenge of the Caribbean.
2018 Winter Solstice Experience. Join us in Sun City, Antigua from Tuesday the 18th to Monday the 24th day of December. Come and bask in the mystic of the Stonehenge of the Caribbean. Come and experience sun, sea, sand, and megalith. Spend 7 days and nights in the heart of the Caribbean. Visit our national heritage sites, meet and greet our people, sample the local fruits and produce, plus the big banquets, lectures, yoga, and of course, Green Castle Hill. Green Castle Hill, Mount Antigua.
Save our national treasure.
Oh, blessed love family, do give thanks. Just one question. How are your kicks? Huh? How are your shoes? What are you wearing? We are now offering the best in leather footwear, emanating out of the factory of Top Ranking Limited, right here in Antigua. in St. John's, in the nation of Antigua and Barbuda. Brother Nathaniel Maynard, also known as Top Ranking, and his wonderful family have established an enterprise that has stood the test of time.
But it's so different today. And because of what transpired and that early gift that now is Top Ranking, you now decide that you want to give back to the young people of Antigua and Barbuda. Tell me about that.
Yes, this skill that I possess is very deep, and it's not common. I think we've created a phenomenal thing, and I need to have it continued. So I'm investing in the youth of the island to teach them. No cost to teaching them whatever they want to know about the skill, whatever department. But there are different procedures and different for different items, and we have all the techniques of doing it. So I want to give on to the youths that
You went
anybody who's interested.
You went off to Italy at a later stage.
Yes, I did. After 12 years of experience,
That trip was to upgrade?
To upgrade, yeah, to learn the industrial system of production.
And now, with this new line of footwear, we are offering boots, ladies' shoes, ladies' sandals, slippers, work shoes, dress shoes, whatever it is, name it, as it relates to footwear, and it is produced in the factory of Top Ranking. You could order your shoes on wholesale as well as retail. See anything that you like? Just contact me. Area code 12687283162, or email me priestisaac27@gmail.com, and I could give you an example of what all we have in store as well as the price of it. And remember that the quality of the footwear has definitely been tried, tested, and has been proven to be of upstanding. Blessed love.
Learn trade and work for yourself. Yeah, you've done it. You guys have done it. Yeah, and successfully you've done it.